Again, thank you for joining us. And we are celebrating the exhibition Incubation, Artists in Pursuit of Discovery, which showcases the work of a selection of our studio assistants from over the last 10 years. Peters Valley Summer Assistants are an integral part of our summer workshop program, and we've seen how at times the studio experience is like an incubation experience. This show focuses on where these artists are now and the new directions that they've taken since leaving Peters Valley. The work is online through August 10th, and I really encourage you to explore all that the online exhibition has to offer. In addition to the images and details for each piece, you'll find artist statements about the work, as well as statements about each artist's assistantship experience and their bios. So please definitely check it out when you have a moment. For this program today, we're going to have a few words by Executive Director Kristen Muller, followed by ceramics head Bruce Dennert, and then a number of the artists will also present for a few minutes talking about their work, either sharing their studio space or some of their work. And then we can conclude with questions and answers if there's still time. So let's bring on Kristen, and she can say a few words about the assistantship at Peters Valley.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and a special hello to all of our former assistants. I'm just so excited to have the possibility of connecting via the internet, because we were so looking forward to this exhibition. Brianna and I have been talking about doing a show of this nature for a number of years, and we finally thought, okay, for our 50th anniversary, let's highlight the people that have come through in the past decade. And I've been the director for 11 years. This would have been my 12th season, the 12th summer. And it's just been so marked, so deeply marked in our experience as the staff of Peters Valley, the lack of our assistants this summer and our students, and all the things that make our campus come alive each year. In particular, our assistantship program, for those of you that are not that familiar with it, or who may have gone through it and not realized what they were getting themselves into at the time, it really is a very special program, pretty unique to our school. Every year we select people who are either, really dedicated to their craft and not going through a university program, or they're in a university program or having just finished one, trying to look for their next step. And they come to help us run the workshops. They are there to be the assistant for the instructors, to help the students, to make sure we take care of our tools, we don't blow ourselves up, we don't get hurt. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make the workshops run properly. And sometimes they get to try new things and work in the studios, but most of all, it is a super intense inputting of information. You're just meeting so many people, making networks, learning new techniques, learning how to teach, learning classroom management. I mean, there's just so much that oftentimes is pretty overwhelming, and the pace is nonstop in the summer. You get one day off, and on that day you've got to do laundry. And it's pretty neat. But what's been so much fun over the years is when we get to write letters of recommendation, when we find out people are going to grad school, or they've gotten an assistantship or an apprenticeship or a residency, or many more, a combination of those opportunities. And then you see people become leaders in the field, take on teaching positions, take on programs that they're managing at different craft schools, write about their experience, exhibit, and we're just so proud of all of you, and continue to thank you for helping to make Peters Valley the magical place that it is. So thank you. And I hope that all of you will take some time to look at the exhibition in detail and contact the artists. You know, now more than ever, you know, the meaning of the work that we do is sort of in question with all the other urgent matters, but it's important, and it's important to support the artists. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to Bruce Dennert.
Hey, Bruce.
Hi, can you hear me? Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the assistants who are all in the show, and also to the past assistants who aren't perhaps represented in the show but are here today to join with us all. Your presence is hugely appreciated, and welcome to all of you out there in the online land who have taken the time out today to join with us. I've been here for 20 years. I've been running the ceramics program, so I've had the pleasure and the untold joys of working with a lot of assistants over the years, not just in ceramics, but in the other studios. And so it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be able to see you here today and to connect with you. I'm going to read a little prepared thing because I didn't want to miss out a single sentiment for how I feel, because I think working with the assistants is right up there at the very top of what I do. It's very important to me and to my practice and to the way that I think about the world, to always have the opportunity to be in touch with the younger generation. So while it's unfortunate we have to use an online platform to honor each of you and the work you're doing, at the same time, I've been hyper aware since March that we're fortunate that we have this technology during a time like this. The silver lining, of course, is that we've been able to expand the number of you who are able to meet in one space, albeit a digital one, and have been able to expand our audience that goes way beyond Peters Valley. When I was your age, this celebration wouldn't have been possible. In many ways, this development has been breathtaking, which in turn gives the passing of time a certain wow factor. This is different from the aha moment. Both are applicable to today's event and how each of you has arrived at this place in your work and your careers. We're here in part because all of you are skilled, smart, and extremely adept at tapping into your own aha moments and wrangling your materials, processes, and ideas into wow factors. But that's not enough, and we all know that. The exhibition that you're presenting was time conjured and cajoled through not only hours, days, and weeks of intense focus, but also through stubborn beliefs in yourselves that we marvel at today. I'm predicting that all of you are headed for lifetimes of success, no matter what versions of success are on offer. You'll all decide that for yourselves. If you're a past assistant attending this reception, the following is for you as well. One of the great honors of working at Peters Valley has inarguably been the opportunity to work with gifted young artists such as all of you. This exhibition in many ways makes memory inescapable for me. I see your work and I'm transponded back to when each of you were here finding ways to challenge your place in the world and in the field of art. Your presence here and the presence of assistants in the years to come is critical to the lifeblood of Peters Valley. You were and will be touchstones where fresh ideas and new ways of folding one moment into another come from. I've had the honor of watching how each of you have developed your work over the years, and without exception, you have demonstrated why you were chosen as assistants those years ago. In closing, we all congratulate you on the work you're making, the lives you're leading, and the legacies you're building. And we wish you and your families good health and bright futures. Thanks to all of you. Thanks.
That was beautiful, Bruce. Wow. What a way to start this reception off. Thank you. That was awesome. Now we're going to bring on some of the exhibition artists. We're going to start with Beryl Perrin Fowler, who's joining us from Bayside, New York. Her piece in the exhibition is titled Square Knot. It's gold fill wire, recycled fabric magnets, and it's done with crochet and sewing. So Beryl, welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad that we can still all gather, and I echo a lot of what Bruce said in how I feel about getting to talk with you all, even if we can't be together physically. So today I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how this work came to be, a little bit through my experience at Peters Valley. So while I was there, we get to participate in every single workshop that happens, which as Kristen said, it can be really overwhelming. And as she said in the description for the exhibition, a lot of what we learn often doesn't come through in our work until much later. So a lot of that I'm still processing, but while I was a fine metals assistant in 2018, I was doing a lot of interdisciplinary work using textile techniques in my metalwork. So a lot of crocheting, as you see in the square knot piece. And at the time I was crocheting by hand every single stitch in a circle, and it was very tedious and it was very difficult. And I developed a new method for making what I call metal rope, which another Emily Fazina, who was the woodshop assistant at the time, she helped me make my own tool on the lathe. She taught me how to use the lathe, and I made this device for making my crocheting go a lot faster. Others have told me that it's called Viking crochet. So I didn't invent this tool, but it has been extremely, extremely helpful in taking my work to the next level, making it a lot easier to make, and allowing me to have those aha moments that Bruce talks about. And so I've been working with that makes the process go a lot faster. And that's something I wouldn't have been able to do if I wasn't at Peters Valley and had the amazing, wonderful talents and skills of all the people around me. And so just to show you a couple more pieces in the same line of the square knot one, this is another square knot that is crocheted all in silver. Half is patinaed and half is in the silver, and it's magnetic at the top, so very easy on and off closure. And then I have another one where I bring in a little bit more fabric. This one is gold fill wire, and I knot it up at the top to hold a piece that's stitched together. So another thing about all of these different skills culminating at different times of our lives that are reflected in our work. I was making these crocheted pieces that were made into rope, but I didn't really have the idea until I was a summer camp counselor the summer after in 2019, where I was doing a lot of rock climbing, that I had the idea to start making these neck pieces into climbing knots and into different kinds of Boy Scout knots. So all of these different things that we learn at different parts in our lives continue to inform our work, and the aha moments aren't just a one and done kind of action that informs our work once and we're done. It takes a lot of time. The aha moments continue to change our work and change the way we think about pretty much everything in the world. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned, not just learned, but really got to experience for the first time at Peters Valley, and continue to kind of understand what that really means. Thank you.
Thanks, Beryl. That was awesome. And I totally know what you're saying, because I always say that my work is a lot of techniques that I have are a series of aha moments, and that's from taking classes at Peters Valley over the years and learning the technique that you might apply 3 years later. You'll have that moment where, oh, I learned that technique and now I'm going to bring it into my work. So I totally echo that. So next we're going to be joined by Alexander Theory from Columbia, South Carolina, and he was the assistant in ceramics in 2016. His piece in the exhibition is of ramen. So it's not ceramics, it is instant ramen noodles and glue molded to look like a ceramic mug. So I just love this piece and look forward to hearing more about your work, Alex. It's nice to see you.
Very nice to see you, and thank you again. And just want to shout out Peters Valley and Bruce and everyone who has really supported assistance throughout the many years of Peters Valley, and given people the opportunity to experiment and network and do everything. I know that in my time since Peters Valley, I think about my experiences there all the time and how valuable they are. And so I think kind of with the work that I put in this show of ramen came from something that I really learned at Peters Valley, and it was one of the first workshops that I was assisting was Posey Bacopoulos. And I had given an artist presentation, and she came up to me and told me that my work was sad because it was really brown and didn't have very many bright colors, which is completely opposite of her work. And she challenged me to make something that was more colorful. And I think ever since then, I've been playing with color. And then here are some things that I'm working on right now. And so these are just some plates that I'm really just playing with color pattern. And this is something that I can do here in my home studio. This is just a shed in my backyard. But I have a nice little throwing area. And then I have my ceramic 3D printer over in the side over there. And then a nice work table to work on. And then I'm also taking like the scraps that I have and just kind of putting them into different forms and things so that I can just look at them later and see if they do become part of anything else. But I do think that my time at Peters Valley was fantastic because I was pushed to like experiment and play, and that's something that has really shown up in pretty much all of my work, and especially of the of ramen. So I'm thinking about the hierarchy of material and how all of those things play into what I'm trying to talk about. And in the future, there will be a combination, hopefully in the very short future, there's a combination of the colorful work from ceramics and kind of the ramen or noodle or any kind of starchy item to be incorporated in to create one object. But again, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We'll next be joined by Anna Koplik, who is currently in Temple, Texas. She was an assistant in our blacksmithing studio in 2015. Her piece in the exhibition is a scissors coat rack, forged brass and steel. Hey, Anna.
Hi. Well, thank you for
Hand it over
having
to
me.
you.
Thanks. So like Brianna said, I'm currently out in Texas. And basically I credit the fact that I am working as a blacksmith, as a journeyman blacksmith on Peters Valley. I originally went to Peters Valley as a student back in 2014 when I was still in college as a jewelry major, and did bladesmithing workshops. In the following summer, once I graduated, I went and worked as the assistant at Peters Valley and really discovered my passion for blacksmithing and that I wanted to be pursuing that more as my career, and was introduced to the whole world of what blacksmithing involves beyond just bladesmithing, and how I could make a living as a blacksmith, which I feel very fortunate to be able to do, and be able to travel and be able to do what I love every day. So let me just give you a little tour of where I currently am, if I can figure out how to turn this around. There we go. So the current place I'm working, I am doing bronze railing fabrication and forging. And because I'm able to do this work as my daily job, it allows me to then have access and travel around and work at a shop that has equipment that at this point in my life I would never have on my own. So I'm able to have access to power hammers and forges and space with anvils and tools and everything a blacksmith could dream of being able to play with. And then because I'm able to make my living doing metal work, I can then use the space I have access to make my own work, which currently primarily is tool making. So in this space, I've mainly been focusing on a lot of hammers and doing a lot of tong making as well, which is something I first learned how to do when I worked at Peters Valley. And then, you know, this is a top tool called a flatter that's in the process of being made. We'll eventually have a hole punched through it and a handle put on. And I'm able to be trying new forgings like this, and I've never done that before. And, you know, I have the space and access to be able to try new things and play around, which I feel very fortunate to be able to do. So, yeah. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having provided me with the assistant position that helped me figure out what I wanted to do with my entire life.
Thanks, Anna. What a fun glimpse into a full blacksmithing shop. Next, we're going to be joined by Ryan Scholes from, well, he's from Hawaii originally, but he is currently in Jacksonville. Oh, excuse me. Let's see. You can see that, right? Do I have my screen on? Okay, sorry. I wasn't sharing my screen. Let me pull up your piece. This is Ryan's piece in our exhibition. It's called Cosmic Volcano Smokester, Mid-Range Porcelain, and it's wheel thrown and altered, hand painted, and slow cooled to cone 5. So Ryan, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. Yeah, let me share my own screen here for a second. As you were just saying, you know, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and for me, a big part of my Peters Valley experience was just getting exposed to things that were so different than what I was used to. Even like with my ceramic experience, I feel like I kind of very much like stumbled into ceramics at this point in a way where, you know, my work was also like a little bit bland, and I was interested in trying to capture these elements of cooking things and sort of juggling a couple of different functionality aspects of ceramic as a material. This is one of the first pieces I made there. And it's one of those pieces that I look back on all the time as a kind of reference point for me, because it was just so much of what I assumed I would be doing forever. But, you know, between making slips for like Doug Peltzman or like just sitting in on like Bill Carty kind of glaze workshop, I just started absorbing so much information, and my understanding of what ceramics as a material could do just completely transformed. And this is the piece that I made for the show. I mean, even just like putting illustrations on pots was this thing. I think I remember asking Bruce at some point if I should do it. I was like, should I put doodles on pots? And I think he said something to the effect of like, well, I don't know. I mean, do you want to? And it took me years to figure it out, but it was something that really stuck with me. But just my attention to color, sort of manipulation of porcelain, these are all skills that I gathered just by very attentively watching what was happening and being a part of that experience. The kind of shotgun, workshop back to back schedule was really important to my development at that time. And I think back to that all the time in regards to my current practice. There's almost every aspect of what I do now, I feel like stems from that experience largely. So to me, it's a really big deal. I think too, it's one of those experiences that, hold on. Let me try to get back on oops. There we go. This is kind of my studio right now. I'm currently a technician and an adjunct faculty at Jacksonville University. And this opportunity, I think, is also very much because of the maintenance aspect, some of the things that we would do, learning how to even just do things like clean shelves for a wood fire kiln versus an electric. A lot of those things were very pivotal in sort of my understanding that's very much become where I am professionally now. So that experience was very much a incubative one for me. And I think it's hard for me to try to envision any aspect of what I do now and who I am now that didn't stem from that early experience, which in my case was the summer of 2013. But yeah, so this is kind of my little setup. But yeah, so I feel as though I am here entirely because of that experience in a lot of ways. And I really appreciate having gone through that experience and just the support of Peters Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. We're going to bring up Abraham Bhootish next. He was our fibers assistant in 2017, and he is now in Glenview, Illinois. His piece in the exhibition is called Countless. It's hand-dyed rayon, mercerized cotton, and it's an echo weave, which maybe he can share more about what that means. So, hey, Abraham.
Hey, everyone. So I'm gonna bring up a PowerPoint. There you go. So I wanted to talk about this piece a little bit more. My inspiration behind it was really looking back to just getting out of college, having been at Peters Valley the year before, and really having all these different options, trying to figure out what to do with my life, which path to take it down. So with these weavings, it's 4 panels that are made exactly the same. That's one of the things when I was trying to focus on my craft. I don't like making the same thing over and over again. That's one of the ways that you make sure that you're skilled in a process is if you can duplicate. So I kind of forced myself to duplicate 1 panel. I turned it into 4, and then there's just countless possibilities of how to position them. And I was kind of feeling that in my life, there's countless different possibilities, different paths I could take, whether it be more craft focused, more art focused, more design focused. So that was kind of inspiration behind it. This is just a little detail shot of one of the panels. And then a little history on me. I started everything with a little Angora goat bottle baby when I was 8 years old. Got his mohair, wanted to learn how to weave and spin, and one thing just led to another. And I learned pretty much all the fiber techniques. There's still a lot more to learn, and I want to learn it all. I'm just absolutely fascinated with everything fiber and textile. I mainly enjoy to do the weaving, spinning, and felting. And then I am currently a designer, a textile designer at Montana Fabrics, where I'm very pleased that I can use a lot of my creativity working in the industry, designing fabrics playing out all the different craft techniques that I've learned throughout my time and at my time at Peters Valley, and utilizing that for production fabrics. Some of my more current work is really focusing on what I call oxygen dyes. So it's using indigo and rust, and working with those relationships, focusing on the human body a lot and the human relationships. And I've been really focusing on how detailed I can get with rust dyeing. These are some of my recent work that I've been trying to examine, just how far I can push the rust dyeing. Yeah.
Thank you. It was so nice to see where your work has gone since you were at Peters Valley.
Yeah, Peters Valley was a great place and a good jumping off point.
That's awesome. Thanks, Abraham. We're next going to be joined by Jessica Mcdonald, who is actually in Canada. We have a number of, our assistants have come from all over, but also internationally. And so Jessica is in Newfoundland, Canada. She was a fibers assistant in 2017. Her piece in the exhibition is called Block Exploration, Linen, Cotton, and Wool. It's naturally dyed, hand woven, and a transparency weave. Hey, Jessica, it's so nice to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Can you guys see me and hear me okay?
Yeah?
Okay, awesome. I just can't see myself, so I want to make sure. Yeah, so I'm actually really excited that we're doing this online because I live in Canada, as Brianna said, and in Newfoundland specifically, on an island in the kind of middle of the ocean. So I would have not been able to partake in this exhibition. So this is actually really exciting for me. But yeah, so my piece that I submitted for this exhibition was really based on exploration. So one of the things that I really took away from Peters Valley when I was there 3 years ago, which I can't believe was 3 years ago, was the opportunity that presented itself was to explore, was to meet other people who are like-minded in craft and passionate about what they do, and find inspiration from that, and give yourself time to play and make and see what happens. So for this one, I was at a residency last year in New York, and I kind of just set up the loom with no plans and went for it, which is, I'm sure maybe any other weavers, maybe Abe out there as well, will know that it's very hard in weaving. You do have to do a lot of prep work, but I kind of just wanted to allow myself to see what happens. So with this, through the process of weaving, the imagery just kind of took shape. I kind of weave and thought, well, maybe I'll do squares, maybe I'll do this. And so each square, although you can't see in this photo, is a different weave structure. So I wanted to play with, manipulating the threads with my hands and what I could do, because, there's a beautiful quote by Ani Albers, who is an iconic weaver, and she says, acceptance of limitations as a framework rather than a hindrance is always proof of a productive mind. And I love that, because with weaving, the threads are very much stationary for your warp, but what you can do with your weft can be endless. And so I took that as a challenge. And so with making, and this piece, the result came out to be a transparent cloth, which is more of an open structure, and oh, I cut, where is it gone? Sorry. And it's inlaid with twill, basket, and in the middle is a lace weave structure, which to me was kind of like a window into the outside world, and I really liked that. And then it just happened. So I allowed the time and let the work happen, which really comes back to what Peters Valley was about. You're able to be surrounded by so many people, so many supportive people, and just let it happen. I am not in my studio right now because I don't have internet access at my studio, but I'm at home, and I don't have a whole lot to show, but I just wanted to like check in and touch base. But also I am working on a little bit of an embroidery project right now, where, you know, with COVID, we're all very much away from our families, and my family is, you know, all over the world, so I don't get to see them anyways. But COVID kind of provided this little bit of opportunity to connect with them on a different level, where you don't have the responsibilities of running to work every day. So I've kind of been exploring, again, allowing the time to use Zoom as a way to communicate, but also do artwork. So with the limitations, of course, I've been away, but I've been trying to find a way to make this work. So I've been exploring by drawing. So watching my niece and my nephew and doing contour drawings and sketches, and then taking that and transferring that to cloth. And the time spent on transferring those images and the drawing in its own way is allowing me to spend time with my family in a different way. And I think that's really exciting. So I'm just gonna quickly show you if I can find my face. There we are. They're just little drawings transferred to cloth, but I find them meditative, and I love them. So, for example, this is my dad. So just kind of, he's in Scotland, so, you know, trying to, in the moments where we get to talk together and just getting the nuances and the curves of his faces, and then spending time stitching it to me, you know, and exploring with what stitches and what I can do to kind of bring him to the cloth in life. But yeah, that's just an example.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. And I'm so glad that at least you can find that silver lining of being able to connect with people that are everywhere. We are finding that right now, talking to you, right, from Pennsylvania to Canada. It's been really great. We've found all this kind of new programming that's been able to reach people as well. So thank you so much for sharing, and it's so good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
We're gonna next hear from Madeline Garetty. She was a special topics assistant, in 2011, and is in Andover, New Jersey. Her piece in the exhibition is Tavahu. You could pronounce that for me probably better than I can.
No, it's fine. You're great. You're doing a great job. It's the Finnish word for winter scarf, because I didn't want to just call it winter scarf, but I didn't want to add to it with the name. Like, I didn't want to overname the piece, you know? It's really like a functional piece. So I just gave it a basic name.
That's awesome. It's a beautiful piece. It's a this is a detail because it's double-sided, but it's a scarf. So if you go and look at the piece, you'll see the whole print, or it's stitching and it's dyed, and I'm sure Maddie will tell you more about it. So I'm gonna stop sharing and hand the screen over. So take it away, Maddie.
When I was at Peters Valley, I was there really for like printmaking, because I went to school for fine arts printmaking, not for textiles. But at that time, the textiles and printmaking departments were sort of like the same department. And so I got exposed to a lot of textile stuff, because I was the assistant for all the classes. And I really I didn't get the opportunity to do that in school, which is something that Peters Valley really gave me that I don't think I would have been able to get anywhere else. And I guess because of that, I ended up working in the textile sort of like field after I moved to Brooklyn. I ended up being a sort of like textile yardage printer in a small scale production studio, doing sort of like, we did t-shirts, but we also did like textiles for fashion shows and like special projects and stuff like that. And I never would have applied for something like that if I hadn't gone to Peters Valley and done those programs there. I selected this piece mostly because it's one of the first pieces that I did that really was like working with like prints and textile techniques, because, you know, printing on textiles is one thing, but like the stitching and sort of quilting techniques that I used, and that was the first time I had tried that. And it really sort of like pulled me deeper into textiles, but also natural dyes. And that I ended up, like now all my work is basically in natural dye, print techniques for natural dye. I had a studio of my own in Brooklyn for a little while. And now I'm sort of like embarking on a project where I'm trying to develop a circular system of printing with natural dye in a studio like the studio I worked in before, so that it's like a smaller scale production studio where it's not a huge place, but they do commercial work. And natural dyes are just such a great opportunity for sustainability, and they are something that I think could really be made circular. Currently, I'm in a smaller part of the project that has to do with testing using different waters, like different sources of water to do different dye techniques with, like using the same dye with a bunch of different waters. So I have just a small example here. And you can see the difference between tap water, spring water, and lake water, especially as it comes to like clearing the background.
Do you mind?
This is all matter. They were all done together. But another woman who works in textiles started a project like this, and we sort of doing the project together where we sample waters from around where we live. And it really has to do with sort of like water quality. Hers is in a place in Louisiana called Cancer Alley because everything is so polluted, I guess. But I don't know, Peters Valley was just a great experience because I got to try new things, and I don't think that I would have ever ended up where I am doing what I'm doing without Peters Valley. So it was a great experience. I mean, obviously I made friends, and swimming and stuff was great too. And like being there was great, but especially learning the things that I learned was amazing. So thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. It's so interesting. I never had thought, and it makes so much sense about how the water sample.
Well, they tell you that water makes a big difference, but you don't realize how big a difference it is.
Exactly. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're next going to be joined by Brianna Lancaster from Lincoln Park, New Jersey. She was an assistant just last summer in our fiber studio, and her piece in the exhibition is called Existential Ribbon. It's dark blue wool, VHS videotape, and red, yellow, and blue rayon, and it's 6-shaft hand weaving. So, hey, Brianna.
Hi. Am I good? Yep. So hi. My journey through the arts is slightly different than most of the people who come through Peters Valley. My relationship with Peters Valley is a bit different. I was born into, as you can see behind me, a very large weaving studio. This is now it's my mother's and my collective studio with looms everywhere. When I was born, she was coming out of the craft show circuit. She did handwoven clothing. So this really was a part of my life from when I was very little. I decided to go a different path. I went to college for an animal science degree. I have numerous certifications in the veterinary field. That was my main goal, my main direction. And the reason I like Existential Ribbons is it showed how my life has changed. I apologize, my dog is deciding to bark after being quiet through this entire presentation. So I'm going to share my screen to give a visual of what I'm talking about. If I can remember which button to press. Share screen. You share from beginning. So this is the piece that has been presented into the exhibition. In the description, it'll show where all the pieces came from, the VHS tape, the wool, and the wool and the loom that the piece was woven on came from people in my life who have been deceased. And I only acquired these pieces because they died. And it sort of shows sort of mortality and how it has influenced my life. When I graduated college, within a year, I had lost my father, which really started this path of me as an artist because I felt like I had something to say. Another piece I did with the VHS tape, sort of exploring what the medium can become, I created this, which is called Midnight Viewing. It started as a challenge of weave sky. And when I thought of sky, I thought of Milky Way, I thought of these undulations, and I found in this, I apologize again, Trigby, please be quiet. And it has, and when it moves, it shimmers like stars, and it looks like you're viewing the world above, and it speaks in a more subtle way. People don't realize at first glance, oh, it's VHS tape. When you feel it, it doesn't feel like scratchy plastic. So it's a bit of a mind twist. And this is a close-up. You can see that there is a matte side and a shiny side to the VHS tape, which does crunch up randomly. Oh, okay, sorry, my dog just pulled my, okay, we're good. The final piece that has a lot to say is this particular one is called the gender game. It's representing a dice with different sides. 3 sides are blue, 3 sides are purple. Oh, sorry, resume slideshow. And there's different gender figures. There's one that's a male figure, a female figure. There's an in-between figure, half skirt, half not. And this sort of shows that you can roll a gender is more like a dice roll. Your biological gender could be something completely different from your presentation gender versus what you feel, what you want to be called, what you want to express. And it sort of encompasses that dynamic. And there was a second piece in the series, which was just the side-by-side of the 2 images, the 2 male and the 2 female. And this slide has a close-up, and you can see that shimmer of the VHS tape. And this one in particular, I really enjoyed making because the source of the VHS tape was from porno videos. And that can add an entire different discussion. And so the reason I left the sciences and decided to pursue the art career that's sort of always been haunting me is I had gotten really sick from 2017 until I was finally diagnosed in 2018. It went through a series of really having a brush with my own mortality. There were two instances of I probably almost died. But it gave me a chance to rethink, what am I doing? What is my path? What am I going to do? And so I took time off. I quit my job, I moved home, and I sort of resettled into, okay, the science hasn't worked for me. Let me try to do this art thing that's been haunting me. And I took the opportunity to apply to Peters Valley, which has always been near and dear to my heart. Like I said, my mother was a craftsperson, and she and my father were both on the board in the 80s. My mother was part of the planning project that acquired Thunder Mountain. So I sort of grew up coming and going into the Peters Valley campus. So this was sort of a return to childhood, a return to safety, a return to something that I knew in order to heal. And the opportunities I found there were unbelievable. I had the chance to take a machine knitting course with Erin Mcdonald, I believe is Mcdonald.
Erin Castellan.
Castellan, thank you. And it's something, I always had this weird preconceived notion of knitting's for old people, like really stupid. And I sat down and she showed the class, and we had an extra working machine. So I sat down and started playing, and it lit a firework under me. It just exploded. And I went home and that was the last 5-day class of the season. about 2 weeks later, right before the craft fair, I ended up in the hospital again with an appendix rupture. My whole last couple of years have been rough, but it pushed me in the direction of, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to try to do. And I went home, and in my recovery, we started renovating our house into the studio that you see in my background. I sat down and I just built a machine. I made sketches, I made designs, and I had this vision. I made this. I designed with all my knowledge of the knitting machine, using hold stitches and in the middle to make the ribbing on the wings, using the whole design to create the 3D scales on the back. This entire, it technically was made in 3 pieces, but were all joined on the machine. So the body and the wings are all one connected piece. And then coming up onto ACC Baltimore, I needed a smaller ticket item, and I drafted out this, where it's just the body cowl. And
Brianna, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we're going to move on to the next presenter.
Okay,
thank you. It's all good. We're going to next be joined by Will Mcdonald. He was also an assistant last summer in our wood shop, and he is from Mahwah, New Jersey. His piece in the exhibition is titled Mementos. It's made of cherry and milk paint, and it is split-turned sound waves taken from songs that, I think we have a typo in our listing, but they're made up from fond memories. So thank you, Will.
Hi, everyone. Let me just pull this up. All right. So I was at Peters Valley last year, and immediately after I left there, I went to do a residency in Philadelphia at University of the Arts. And the first thing that I put together from that residency was this display case. And this was sort of like a mixture of all the different things I explored, learned, and just tried out at Peters Valley. And I thought it was so interesting to put this together, because if you had compared this display to any of the work that I've previously made, it's like night and day difference. They're complete opposites. And I definitely saw the effects of Peters Valley as soon as I got there, basically. And so I did a couple shows where I put together a little bit just to sort of test the waters and test the markets, because I got to Peters Valley immediately after finishing my bachelor's degree. So this was sort of my first dive into sort of the real world, I guess, to put it. But to the piece that I have in the exhibition, it started at Peters Valley, where I was just spending a lot of time either listening to music or being up on Thunder Mountain and just listening to like the animals or the wind, and just thinking a lot about sound for like hours. And so I got to the point where I thought about how weird sound waves look compared to how they actually sound. Like birds chirping could look like this image in the top left, and it's just complete polar opposites, because one's soothing and that looks kind of harsh. And so I really wanted to explore this a little further. And so I started making a bunch of them, of like different sounds that I recorded or songs that I liked. And so this is the in progress piece that's in the exhibition. And this one is from a concert that I went to with my brother, which I look back on as one of like the best nights of my life. And I just kept exploring with it a little bit. So that came out of it as well. This one's just, they're a little offset from each other, and it just sort of messes with the head a little bit, and I find that pretty cool. And so there's the final piece that I came up with, and I'm going to continue making this series. This one is Let It Be by the Beatles. This is the first little sound clip that I made for someone else because it's my dad's favorite song. So I made a couple of those for him. And then I always have like at least 4 or 5 projects going on at the same time because it keeps me sort of working and motivated. And so these are some of the other things that I was doing in my residency. Just exploring with some pictures, some carving textures, and then some weird looking furniture things, because I think I wanted to fail a lot in this series and just stop being afraid of failure. And then the pandemic hit, and so now I'm working out of my parents' garage, and I'm lucky enough to still have a few machines around and still be able to make things. And I've been laying flooring and just doing a bunch of odd jobs. And so I'm just happy to be able to still be working in some form. But yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks.
I love that direction that you've taken with the sound waves. It definitely keep it up. It's really cool.
Thank you.
We have one more official presenter, which is Katie Fee. And then I'd love to have all the assistants put their videos back up. But Katie was an assistant in our ceramics studio in 2017. She is currently in St. Petersburg, Florida. This is her piece in the exhibition, Terracotta Bract. It's terracotta and glaze and constructed from slabs. And hey, Katie.
Hi. Hello, can you guys see me?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hi everybody. Cool, so I'm actually, right now I'm in my gallery, not in my gallery, but in a gallery where my partner and I have a show up. So we thought that we'd share a little bit and then just show you guys the work that we've been making since we've been self-quarantined alone together for 4 months now. I think one thing to say just right from the beginning is like, thank you to Bruce and to Kristen. I don't know if you guys both, I'm sure you guys both remember me being an assistant, but I remember starting in on some pots while I was assisting Kristen's T-bowl class that put me down this rabbit hole into the body of work that I used to apply for the residency I'm doing now, and the same body of work that I used to apply for grad schools. And that's not as evident in this show, but when you guys were talking about Peters Valley and seeing all of you, I was remembering just the night after one of Kristen's demonstrations, I was started to make some T-bowls and we talked about them the next day, and it's 3 years later and I'm still finessing that workout, which Peters Valley, what a place. So in any case, I want to show you guys today this show that we have up right now, which is our farewell to St. Petersburg and our farewell to this gallery. There's a couple of people just walking through, but it's mostly closed. The show's called In the Garden, and it's a reflection of our time physically distancing during the pandemic. In the face of a citywide lockdown, Daniel, who's a plein air painter, was no longer able to bike to different places every day and paint new places. And I was no longer able to teach or fire kilns, and my access to the studio was suddenly much different than it had been. And so with all of that changing and with so many other cultural foundations just shifting rapidly beneath our feet, we were spending a lot of time alone together and a lot of time working in our emptied community garden. It became this really anchoring part of our days and weeks. And so the show is a reflection of that and sort of a narrative of the past couple of months for us. So it's pots that I made to propagate plants and also to play up things that we cut from our garden. So there's some vases and some planters and some other forms. And then all of Daniel's paintings are directly of garden boxes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pick you guys up and cart you around for a second. And then, please cut me off if I go on for too long. I am known to ramble sometimes. Why don't you walk with me instead of holding the?
Sure.
I think we can do this. So this is, we're at the Moraine Center for Clay, which is where I'm a resident right now. These are some planters that we made that make this specific type of weed, philodendron, look a lot, I think, nicer and prettier, and can be hung from anyone's home. Let's show them some of your work, darling.
Sure.
So Daniel has painted all of these garden beds, and well, you could speak about them too, but a lot of the paintings are of the same exact view, but as it changes over time. And one of the things that we've been talking about and reflecting on is how working in the garden is a lot like both of our studio practices in terms of daily repetition, the sort of radical presence that's required to both garden and to build a pot and to represent a three-dimensional space on a painting. And so there's something really gratifying about the interplay, not only in bringing our garden inside with the artwork that we've made of it, but in the parallels and synchronicity between the processes.
Yeah.
This is, I think, maybe
The showstopper?
Yeah, why don't you talk about it for a second?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel. This one was one of the larger pieces and one of the later, it's the last piece I painted in the show. And it's, of one of the many, there are many different garden boxes there. So I was really able to spend a lot of time in this place and watch things change and learn a lot about the garden as a place and meditate on it, learn the cycles and the wildlife. It was a very centering place to go and work. So it was really nice for us.
Yeah, for both of us. Just to highlight a little bit more work from the show, we've got this plant that's a subtropical plant called Zigzag Orchid. And between looking at marigolds in our garden and looking at these, I started working on forms that really play up positive and negative space. And the point of these is that they really constrict where the plants can fit. So they spring up from the form and leave sort of shadowy canyons in between. And then also the forms modulate. So with that three-pointed shape, you can rearrange it all sorts of different ways. I think a couple of other things to show. Well, there's a number of really large plants just actively growing in our space, which are all things that we've been propagating in our garden and which.
We got some volunteers.
Yes, we are. And which we just brought inside for the duration of the show. And then maybe one last set to show you guys. So this is a subtropical croton. And then I've been working in my pots of sort of playing up architectural elements and still trying to maintain a fresh and atmospheric surface, but things that are a bit more structural. Yeah, with everything changing so much in our friend groups and our lives, the work that I've been making has been radically changing in front of me. It's still pots, but it's shifting really quickly. So in any case, I think I've gone on for quite a while. Maybe I'll pause now. Thanks for letting me ramble and for looking at this show with me.
Thanks, Katie. It was really fun to see a gallery space since I haven't seen one in a while. So thank you, everyone. I'd love for all of the assistants to put their videos on and just show everybody your faces. It's so wonderful to have so many of you joining us. You can also put your sound on and say hi, whatever you want. It's just really nice to see all of you. And I should get my face off of this and do a screenshot or something, but thank you. Anybody else out there?
Should we say thank you?
Yeah.
I know someone else is trying to get
Yay.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us.